The quiet man at aisle 3. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon in a quiet neighborhood just outside Los Angeles. The kind of place where people left their porch lights on out of habit, not fear. The corner store at the end of Cypress Street had been there for over 40 years. Old bricks, faded signage, and the smell of warm bread and floor cleaner welcomed anyone who walked in. Inside the store, Amir, the owner, was stacking milk cartons behind the counter. He had run the place for over 20 years. He knew everyone's names, their favorite snacks, and even when someone had a bad day just by the way they walked in. It wasn't just a store. It was part of the neighborhood's rhythm. That afternoon, a man walked in wearing a loose gray hoodie and faded jeans. He kept his head down, his hands in his pockets. His beard was a little messy, his hair longer than usual. To most people, he looked like just another tired stranger picking up groceries. What no one knew was that the man was Keanu Reeves. He had been in the area visiting an old friend, but had stepped out for some air and to grab a bottle of water. He preferred places like this, quiet, simple, untouched by flashing cameras or fake smiles. Keanu stood in aisle 3, looking at a row of granola bars. His fingers slowly brushed across the packaging. He wasn't really hungry. He just liked the calm of small places. Outside, a car pulled up fast and hard. The tires screeched slightly as it stopped. Two men got out. They were young, nervous, and angry. Both wore ski masks and had something hidden under their jackets. Inside, Amir looked up and felt a chill run down his back. Something in the air shifted. Years of working the counter had taught him to listen to his gut. And his gut now screamed one word: danger. The bell above the door rang again. The two masked men walked in fast. One headed straight for the counter. The other moved to block the entrance, and that's when the first man pulled a handgun from his jacket. "Empty the register," he shouted. "Now!" Amir froze. His hands trembled. "Please," he said. "You don't have to do this. I have a family. Don't talk." The second man barked. "Just give us the money." Keanu Reeves was still standing in aisle 3. But now, his body had changed. His breath slowed. His back straightened. His eyes sharpened. No one else noticed. But something deep inside him had activated something from a past he had buried long ago. Long before the movies. Long before the fame. When he had lived under a different name, served in places no one talked about, and belonged to a unit that didn't officially exist. Delta Force. Elite. Invisible. Lethal. But now, he was just a man in a hoodie. A man trying to live quietly. Keanu peeked around the corner and saw the gun pointed at Amir. He noticed the nervous shaking in the robber's hands. He watched how the second man kept checking the windows. They were scared, young, dangerous because of their fear. The store was silent. Amir tried to open the register, but his fingers slipped on the keys. "Faster!" The robber screamed. I'm trying." Keanu moved quietly, carefully. His feet didn't make a sound. He stepped toward the cleaning supplies, picked up a metal mop handle, and gripped it tightly. One of the robbers shouted, "We'll shoot if you don't hurry." Keanu didn't speak. He didn't blink. His focus narrowed. 20 years ago, he had taken down armed guards in the middle of the night on a rooftop in a foreign land. Today, he was just trying to stop two scared kids from ruining 3 lives, and so he acted with speed that defied explanation. He moved out from aisle 3. He swung the mop handle in a clean arc. It struck the second robber in the arm, sending the gun flying across the tile floor. Before the first robber could turn fully, Keanu had already lunged forward. With one arm, he grabbed the barrel of the pistol and twisted it away. With the other, he used the end of the mop to sweep the robber's legs out from under him. The man hit the floor with a loud thud. The air knocked from his lungs. The store was chaos now. Amir ducked behind the counter. The second robber scrambled toward the door, holding his wrist in pain. But Keanu didn't chase him. He knelt beside the first man, disarmed the weapon, and checked to make sure no one had been shot. His voice, when he finally spoke, was calm, firm. "Stay down. You're done." The robber looked up, coughing. Who are you?" Keanu looked at him for a moment. The answer almost came out, but he simply said, "Someone who used to do worse things than you, but chose not to anymore." Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have called the police. Keanu stood up, walked behind the counter, and handed Amir the gun. "Grip first." Amir looked at him, stunned. "Who are you?" he whispered. Keanu gave a soft, tired smile. "Just a customer." When the police arrived, they found one robber unconscious on the floor, the other gone, and Keanu sitting on a milk crate drinking water from a bottle. He gave a short statement. No flash. No pride. No details about who he was. The officers didn't recognize him at first. But one of them, a young cop with sharp eyes, whispered to his partner, "Is that Keanu Reeves?" They searched his ID. It was him. But there were no headlines the next day. No press, because Keanu didn't want it. He slipped away as quietly as he had arrived, vanishing into the streets. Later that night, Amir sat at the counter with his wife, watching the store's security footage. They watched again and again, as the man in the hoodie stopped the robbery with movements that didn't seem real. "He saved us," his wife whispered, "and never asked for anything," Amir replied. "But Keanu? He didn't go home. He drove to a park and sat on a bench alone, staring at the moon above the trees. His hands were steady, but his heart wasn't. He had promised himself he'd never fight again, never use that part of himself. But when he saw Amir shaking, helpless, he couldn't stay still. He remembered his old captain's words from years ago. If you still have the skill but walk away from the fight, you better have a good reason. And if you go back in, make sure it's worth it. Tonight it had been worth it. A man had been saved, a life spared, a robbery stopped. But Keanu knew this wasn't over, because one robber had escaped. And soon, more than just memories from his past would come knocking. Shadows. Don't forget what days had passed since the attempted robbery at the corner store. Amir had replaced the cracked glass on the entrance door and rearranged the shelves that had been knocked over in the chaos. He tried to go back to normal, smiling at customers and handing out gum to neighborhood kids. But inside, something had changed. And he wasn't the only one. Keanu Reeves sat in a small rented apartment 2 blocks from the coast. It was simple, just a bed, a chair, and a table near the window where the sunlight poured in every morning. He liked it that way, clean, quiet, empty of distractions. But this morning, the quiet felt different. His phone buzzed once. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. "We know what you did. You should have stayed hidden." He stared at the screen, unreadable, then slowly turned the phone face down. For a long time, he just sat. Listening. Breathing. Thinking. The message didn't scare him. It stirred something else. Recognition. 3 miles away, in an abandoned building tucked behind an old factory, the man who had escaped the corner store robbery was pacing. His name was Tyrell, only 19. And in way too deep. He hadn't expected it to go that way. They were just supposed to grab the cash and run. His cousin had said it would be quick, easy, but that man, the one in the hoodie, he had moved like a ghost, like a machine. Tyrell kept replaying it in his head. How fast it happened. How strong that grip was. How the gun vanished from his hand before he even blinked. It wasn't normal. It wasn't something you learned on the streets. And now the gang Tyrell owed money to the people who had forced him into that robbery were asking questions. "You said it was a small-time store," one of them snapped. "You said the guy behind the counter would freeze. You didn't say anything about him." They had seen the security footage. Someone had leaked it online. The video didn't show Keanu's face clearly, But it showed enough to spark whispers that someone had identified him, and worse. Someone remembered his past, not the movie past, the real past. Back when he wasn't Keanu Reeves the actor, but a man who had trained in silence, vanished into missions no one admitted existed, and walked away when his soul got too heavy. Delta Force wasn't the badge you wore. It was a scar you carried. And now the past had found him again. That afternoon, Amir's wife begged him to take a break. He finally agreed and walked to the park where he had first met Keanu weeks ago, sitting on a low bench near the duck pond. He found him there, exactly where he thought he'd be. Keanu was feeding crumbs to the birds, staring at the water like it held all the answers he didn't want to ask. "You okay?" Amir asked gently. Keanu nodded, but didn't look up. "You?" Amir sat beside him, getting there. They sat in silence for a while. Then Amir spoke again. "I think they'll come back." Keanu's fingers paused. The one who ran. "I think he's scared, and scared people do dangerous things." Keanu finally looked at him. "You should close the store for a few days." "I can't. I've got bills, my wife's medicine, our son's school." Keanu's jaw clenched. He reached into his back pocket, pulled out a small envelope, and handed it over. Amir opened it. Inside was a thick stack of cash. "I don't want charity," Amir said quickly. "It's not charity," Keanu replied. "It's time." "Time for what?" "To let me handle what's coming." Back at the warehouse, Terrell sat in the corner while three men stood in a circle arguing. One of them, a tall man with cold eyes and a steel chain around his neck, seemed to be the leader. His name was Mason, former military, dishonorably discharged. Ruthless. He had once worked for people who did dirty things in places no one talked about. He recognized the way Keanu had moved in that video. "That's not some random guy," Mason said. "He's trained, high level." "Like Army?" One asked. "No better." Mason pulled out a phone and tapped through files. He had access most people didn't. After a few minutes, he stopped. He held up a photo. There was Keanu years younger. Hair shorter, wearing full tactical gear. "Name used to be something else," Mason muttered. "No records, no rank. Just code numbers, Delta unit." "So what now?" Tyrell asked, trembling. "Now?" Mason smiled. "We test the ghost." That night, Keanu didn't sleep. He didn't sit. He stood in the middle of the room, eyes closed, breathing slow. He remembered what it felt like to be on mission. To clear buildings. To calculate threats. To make decisions no one should have to make. He had left all that behind after one final mission that broke something inside him. But tonight, he sharpened himself again. Not for revenge. Not for ego. But for protection. He pulled a locked trunk from under the floorboards. Inside were old tools. A tactical flashlight. A watch that never stopped ticking. A copian. Knife so balanced it could split a coin. And something else. A photo. A younger version of himself, standing beside three other men in a dusty field, all wearing the same patches. He stared at it for a long time, then closed the trunk. At exactly 3:07 a.m., Amir's phone buzzed. He answered quickly. Keanu's single quotes as voice was steady. "Stay out of the store tomorrow." "Why?" "Because they'll be there." "How do you know?" "Because I would be, if I were them." The next morning, the sun rose like nothing was wrong. Birds chirpe. Traffic passed, and three men walked toward the corner store dressed like workers, each carrying a tool bag. Keanu was already inside. Alone. Waiting. The first man stepped through the door. Keanu didn't look up. The second followed, moving to the side. The third stopped near the entrance, pretending to check his phone. Keanu stood near the fridge aisle, sipping water. "You him?" the first man asked. Keanu didn't answer. He took one last sip. Then set the bottle down. "You think you're untouchable?" The second man said. "We know who you are." Keanu turned slowly. His voice was low, calm. then you know I won't let you hurt anyone. Mason stepped forward from the shadows behind the shelf. He was bigger than the rest, smarter too. What's the plan? He said. You going to do that Delta thing again? Keanu looked him in the eye. Only if I have. Tazo. The silence in the store thickened, and then the first man lunged. But Keanu was faster. He used a broom handle from the cleaning cart, swung it low, and knocked the man to the floor. The second man reached into his bag too slow. Keanu kicked the bag across the room. The gun inside never saw daylight. Then Mason moved. Keanu blocked the first hit, ducked the second, then used Mason's own momentum to send him crashing into a stack of boxes. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was precise. Controlled. Until all three men were down. Groaning. Coughing. Defeated. Keanu stood in the middle of the wreckage, his breathing steady. His hands relaxed. And for a moment, there was silence, then a soft clapping from the entrance. Terrell. The boy from the robbery. He hadn't come to fight. He had come to see if the stories were true. He saw everything. The calm. The control. The choice. You could have killed them. Tyrell said. Keanu looked at him. But I didn't. Why? Keanu walked closer, his voice barely above a whisper. Because I've seen what happens when violence becomes the only language, and I chose a different one. Tyrell nodded. Then slowly reached into his jacket. Keanu didn't flinch, but Tyrell only pulled out a small folded piece of paper. He placed it on the counter. A confession, he said. Give it to the cops. I'll go in. I'm done running. Keanu looked at the boy. Then at the men still groaning on the ground. Then back at Tyrell. Good, he said softly. Now your life begins. The confession, the consequence, and the choiceth morning sun spilled across the rooftops of the neighborhood like soft gold. People walked their dogs, sipped coffee, and chatted like it was just another calm day. But inside the corner store, on Cypress Street, things were far from calm. Amir stood behind the counter, holding the folded confession note in his hands. He read it again and again. The words were messy, rushed, but they were real. Tyrell had written every detail of the robbery, from the planning to the execution, and even named the men who had forced him into it. And at the bottom, he had signed just one word: sorry. Keanu sat nearby, quiet, sipping black coffee. His knuckles were bruised. His hoodie had dust on the sleeves. He looked like someone who had just come back from a long run. But behind his calm eyes, something deeper stirred, like a man standing between two worlds. You sure about this? Amir asked him. Keanu nodded. If he's serious, we have to let the law do its part. Amir hesitated. You think he'll actually turn himself in? Keanu didn't smile, but his voice was gentle. He already did. The moment he walked away instead of fighting. Across town, Tyrell sat in a small church, not because he was religious, but because it was the only place that felt quiet enough to think. He had spent the night staring at the walls, wondering how his life had come to this. He hadn't been born a criminal. He used to love music, used to take care of his little sister when his mom worked nights. He had dreams, small ones maybe, but they were real. Until everything collapsed. Until the wrong people offered easy money, and even easier lies. But now he had seen something else. He had seen Keanu. Not just the moves, not just the takedown. He had seen the restraint. The control. The power that came from not hurting when hurting was easy. And Tyrell wanted that kind of strength. So he called the police himself. And when they came to get him, he didn't run. At the station, Detective Ramos looked through the confession letter. She was sharp, fair, and had seen enough fake remorse to fill 10 lifetimes. But this was different. She read the part where Tyrell described Keanu's actions during the robbery. The precision, the calm. This man, he ever give you a name? She asked. Tyrell shook his head. Just said he used to do worse things. But doesn't anymore. Ramos narrowed her eyes. Sounds military. Yeah, Tyrell said. But not like soldiers on TV. He moved like time didn't matter. Ramos leaned back, thoughtful. She had heard whispers about men like that. Men who operated under silence, who were ghosts, who left no footprints. Where is he now? She asked. Tyrell shrugged. Probably saving someone else. Back at the store, Keanu stood in the back room, looking at the old security monitor. The footage showed the takedown from 2 angles. Clear enough to see what had happened, but still blurry enough to keep his identity safe. At least for now. Amir walked in holding 2 cups of tea. "No, the cops are going to come looking for you soon," he said. Keanu nodded. "I know. You gonna tell them everything?" "No, why not?" Keanu looked down at his hands. "Because once they know who I was, they'll stop seeing who I am now." Amir didn't argue. Instead, he placed a small cloth on the table, opened it, and revealed a polished silver coin. "My father gave me this," he said, "before he passed. Said it would always protect me, even when he couldn't." Keanu looked at the coin. It was worn smooth on one side. Engraved on the other were the words, "In the quiet, find your fight." Amir pushed it toward him. "Take it," he said. "You might need it." As expected, Detective Ramos came by the store that afternoon. She wore plain clothes, no badge showing, and walked like someone used to being watched. "You must be Amir," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for the man who stopped the robbery." Amir didn't blink. "A lot of people were here. Chaos. Maybe he left before the police arrived." Ramos tilted her head. "You sure?" "Pretty sure," Amir said, without lying. But also without telling the whole truth. Ramos looked past him, into the store, as if expecting someone to step forward. But Keanu was already gone, not hiding. Just moving forward. Like he always did. That evening, Keanu walked down a long stretch of beach. The wind tugged at his jacket. The waves roared like they had something to say. He stepped out onto the sand and pulled out the silver coin from his pocket. He held it between his fingers, thinking of Amir's words, thinking of Tyrell, thinking of the lives he'd touched just by not walking away. When he turned around to leave, he saw someone standing at the edge of the sand. It was Tyrell's little sister. Her name was Maya. 10 years old, braids in her hair. Notebook clutched to her chest. Keanu walked up slowly. She looked up at him, not scared, not nervous. Just curious. "Are you the man who helped my brother?" Keanu knelt down so they were eye to eye. "I tried," he said gently. Maya held out the notebook. On the cover, she had drawn a picture of her family, her mom, Tyrell, and herself. Next to them was a man with a beard and a hoodie, holding a stick like a sword. "That's you," she said. "My brother said you were like a real hero." Keanu didn't know what to say. But she wasn't done. "He's gonna come home after. The nice police lady said he might go to a program to help him change. And when he gets better, he said he's gonna teach me how to play music again." Keanu smiled softly. "That's good." Maya nodded. "Do you have a little sister?" Keanu shook his head. "I had someone once. Not a sister, but close." Maya tilted her head. "Do you miss them?" "Every day," Keanu said. Maya looked at him for a long time. Then she reached into her small backpack and pulled out a red crayon. She handed it to him. "So you don't forget to color your life too." Later that night, Keanu returned to his apartment and placed the red crayon on the windowsill next to the coin. He looked out at the stars. The past was still behind him, but ahead? A path filled with choices, not missions. Not orders, just moments to protect, people to care for. And stories to change. Meanwhile, deep in the city, Mason sat in a dim room with bandages on his ribs and a burning anger in his eyes. His crew was broken, his name was slipping, and he wanted one thing: Now to find out who the quiet man really was, and finish what the boy had failed to do. Asterisk the trap. The fire and the forgotten Namath City moved on like it always did. News of the robbery faded from the headlines. Most people never knew who stopped it. They didn't know about the bruised hands or the red crayon resting on a quiet man's windowsill. They didn't know that Keanu Reeves was more than just a movie star with a calm voice and a kind face. They didn't know he had once been something else. Something that didn't wear a name. It had been 6 days since the store incident. Keanu spent most of that time walking the edges of the city. He kept a low profile, just as he always had. No cameras, no interviews, no show. He helped an old woman load groceries into her trunk. He spent one afternoon fixing a broken bench at the park. He gave his jacket to a teenager sleeping near the bus stop. But even with all that peace around him, he could feel it in the air. Something was coming. He could smell it in the wind. A trap at a small apartment across town. Mason sat on a couch, flipping through a folder. The lights were off. Only the glow of his laptop lit the room. The man had connections, deep ones, in the shadows of systems most people never saw. And finally, he found it. Not a full file, not a name, but a code from a military archive buried under layers of encryption. Ghost Unit 190K. No name. No birth record. Just the note. Classified, inactive, non-operational, do not engage. But Mason didn't care about warnings. He cared about revenge. And he was building something for it. Meanwhile, at the local youth rehabilitation center, Tyrell had started his first session. His counselor was a soft-spoken man named Lenny who believed in second chances more than anything else. Tyrell sat in a small circle with 5 other boys. Some had stolen cars. Others had sold drugs. All of them carried the same look in there. Eyes lost, tired, waiting for someone to show them they could be more. When it was Tyrell's turn to speak, he stood up slowly. "I don't want to be remembered for that video," he said. "I want to be remembered for what I do next." Keanu had told him those words once. And now he was living them. Keanu watched the center from a bench across the street. Not because he didn't trust Tyrell, but because he cared. He was proud. But his gut told him something else needed watching. That night, Amir's store was quiet. He had closed early to rest. His wife had finally convinced him to take a night off. So Keanu stopped by to check on things. He walked through the aisles slowly, listening. His boots barely touched the floor. Every shelf, every shadow, was familiar. And then he saw it. A red laser dot dancing across the far wall. His eyes narrowed. A sniper. He dropped low and moved fast, ducking behind the shelves. Glass shattered behind him. A shot had been fired. But not at him. It hit the counter. Meant for the register. Meant as a warning. Not a kill. A message. Keanu rolled to the back room and exited through the alley. He sprinted around the block, taking shortcuts through gardens and fence gaps, finally reaching the rooftop where the shot had come from. The sniper was gone, but he had left behind a single bullet on the ledge. Taped to it was a small strip of paper. 2 words, "You're next." Keanu didn't call the police. He returned to his apartment, locked the doors, and sat in silence. His fingers tapped the bullet on the table again and again. He didn't fear the threat. He feared what it would force him to become again. He had worked so hard to let that version of himself go. But now he needed to remember. He walked to the closet and pulled down a hidden case. Inside were memories. Old patches, dusty ID, tags with no name. And something else. A folded piece of paper. A note from a friend who had once served beside him. It read, "If they ever find you again, don't run. Lead them somewhere they'll regret following." Keanu set the paper aside. And began to plan. Meanwhile, Mason was on the move. He had gathered 3 new men ex-cons with military backgrounds, hungry for money and revenge. They weren't loyal. They were loaded. And that's all Mason needed. Take him down, Mason said. But not in the city. Not near cameras. We bait him somewhere quiet. Somewhere we control. He held up a photo. Tyrell. 2 nights later. Tyrell got a text. Come to the old train yard. Bring the notebook. It's important. Tyrell's heart dropped. He didn't recognize the number, but the message mentioned something only someone close would know. He packed the notebook and slipped out the back of the center. He didn't see the van watching from across the street. Keanu was at the store when he heard Amir's phone. Buzz. Amir handed it to him. It's Tyrell's sister, he said. She says he's missing. Keanu stood up. His eyes darkened. And in that moment, the soldier inside him came back to life. The train yard was cold. Metal groaned in the wind. Old boxcars stood like rusted tombs. Tyrell stepped through carefully, heart pounding. Then a hand grabbed him from behind. A bag over his head. Shouting. Laughing. He struggled. But it was no use. They threw him into a rail car and locked the door. Mason stood outside. He'll come for you, he said through the slats. And when he does, we finish this. But Keanu was already moving. He drove through back roads, his mind clear. The map in his head was old, but accurate. He parked a mile out and moved on foot. No flashlight. No sound. Just memory. Every step was calculated. Every shadow read. When he reached the train yard, he paused behind a tall stack of crates. He saw the men. 4 of them. Spread out. Armed. Ready. But they weren't ready for him. Keanu moved like wind. He disarmed the first man with a silent strike to the neck, used the man's own gun to disable the second without firing. He crept along the boxcars, counting steps, measuring noise, breathing slow. And then he reached Mason. The man stood near the locked rail car, holding a pistol, smiling. I knew you'd come. Keanu stepped out of the shadows. You wanted the old me, he said. You found him. Mason fired. Keanu ducked, rolled, kicked the gun from his hand, and struck him twice in the ribs. Mason grabbed a knife from his boot and swung. Keanu blocked with his forearm, twisting Mason's wrist until the blade dropped. They fought hand to hand. Brutal. Silent. A memory of a war never spoken. And then Keanu pinned Mason down. This ends now, he said. Mason spat blood. You're not a soldier anymore. Exactly, Keanu said. Which is why you're still breathing. He opened the railcar and pulled Tyrell out. The boy was shaking, but safe. You came, he whispered. Always, Keanu said. Later. When the police arrived, Mason and his crew were already restrained. The officers didn't ask questions. They just nodded. Like they somehow knew. But no names were written in reports. No charges filed under Keanu Reeves. He was already gone. That night, back at the park, Keanu sat beside Maya again. She handed him a new crayon. This one was blue. For calm, she said. You look tired. Keanu smiled, because even heroes needed rest. The reunion, the reporter, and the mask begins to slip days had passed since the rescue at the train yard. Tyrell was back at the youth center. Mason and his men were in custody. And the corner store had become something of a quiet legend in the neighborhood. People whispered about it, like it was a dream. Some said it was a setup. Others claimed it was staged. But one thing was clear. Something had changed, and the man responsible had disappeared again. Keanu Reeves walked through the farmer's market that morning like any other man, wearing a simple jacket, jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He carried a paper bag of apples and listened to the street musicians play. But as he reached for a bunch of bananas, a voice stopped him cold. Mr. Reeves. Or should I say 0K? He turned slowly. Standing there was a young woman with curly hair, a camera bag slung over her shoulder, and a press badge tucked into her jacket. Her name was Leila Hart, a small-time reporter with big instincts. Keanu didn't answer. Leila continued softly. I saw the train yard. I talked to the officer who slipped me the report. He said there was no official statement. No names. But someone brought down 4 armed men without firing a shot. And they all kept saying the same thing. The ghost did it. Keanu stepped away from the stand. She followed. You don't have to say anything, she said. I just want to know why a man like you, an actor, a public figure, would risk everything to stop a robbery, rescue a kid, and vanish. Keanu stopped near a shaded bench. He sat down. After a moment, he spoke. His voice was calm, measured, because there are 2 kinds of people in this world. The ones who wait for someone else to step in, and the ones who just do. Layla sat beside him. Were you really part of Delta Force? He looked away. Once. What happened? Keanu hesitated. Then said quietly, I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. Layla didn't write that down. She just nodded. Double quotes. I won't print anything, she said. Not without your permission. But people need to hear stories like this. They need to believe that good still exists. Keanu gave her a tired smile. It doesn't need headlines. It just needs to be done. Across the city, Tyrell was standing in front of a classroom of younger kids. He was nervous, sweating slightly, but his voice was strong. I did something bad, he said. But someone believed I could be more. So now I try to be. The kids listened. One of them, a boy named Nate, raised his hand. Are you a hero now? Tyrell chuckled. Nah. I'm just trying to do better than I did yesterday. Back at the store, Amir was hanging a new photo on the wall. It was a group shot from a recent neighborhood event. Keanu stood in the back, barely visible, but Amir pointed him out to anyone who asked. That's the man who stopped time. No one ever understood what he meant. But those who had seen what happened knew exactly. That evening, Keanu stood at the edge of the city, looking down at the lights below. He held a letter in his hand unopened. It had been mailed to the store, addressed only to the man who didn't flinch. He finally opened it. You don't know me, but my brother was one of the men you stopped. He used to be kind. Then he wasn't, but now in jail he's remembering who he was. And it's because of you. Thank you. You didn't just stop him. You woke him up. Keanu folded the letter slowly and tucked it into his coat. He stood there for a long time, listening to the wind. Layla Hart kept her word. She didn't print the article, but she did write something else, a fictional story, based on a quiet man in a loud city who remembered how to move like a shadow and chose to stand still. It went viral. People loved the story. Some thought it was about a superhero. Some thought it was a myth. But Tyrell knew the truth. And so did Maya. Weeks later, Tyrell received his first official offer to join a music program out of state. They were willing to take a chance. He could study, perform, grow. Before he left, he stopped by the store one last time. Keanu was there, fixing the broken light above the freezer. You gonna tell me goodbye? Tyrell asked. Keanu looked down from the ladder. No. I'm gonna tell you to keep going. Tyrell nodded. Then reached into his backpack and pulled out the same red crayon Maya had once given him. He handed it back. You kept my family together, he said. But I think you need this more than me now. Keanu looked at the crayon, then at Tyrell. You're gonna do fine. As Tyrell walked away down the sidewalk, a black car pulled up across the street. Keanu noticed it immediately. A man stepped out. He was older, sharp, suit. Military posture. No smile. He walked up slowly and stopped a few feet away. 0K. He said. Keanu didn't answer. They're requesting you, just once, off the record. Something's moving overseas, and they want the best. Keanu looked at the man. Long pause. Then he said, tell them I'm out. The man nodded. I figured you'd say that, but they'll ask again. Keanu turned and walked back toward the store. Without fear. Without hurry. He didn't look back. The man got in the car, dialed a secure number. He's still alive, he said. And he hasn't lost a step. That night, Keanu sat on the rooftop of his building. The red crayon beside him. The coin from a mirror in his hand. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to breathe without looking over his shoulder, because he knew the past might knock again. But this time, he was ready, not as a ghost, not as a soldier, but as a man who chose peace, and would fight only when peace was in danger. Legacy in silence. The return of the ghost air was crisp and quiet as morning broke across the city skyline. Orange light crept over rooftops and washed over sidewalks that had seen more than they could ever speak of. But inside a modest apartment, tucked between two forgotten buildings, Keanu Reeves sat with a steaming cup of coffee, staring out the window at nothing in particular. It had been 3 months since the corner store robbery. 3 months since the rescue at the train yard. 3 months since he reminded the world and himself that there are still people willing to step into danger when others look away. He was no longer just Keanu. He was once again the man they used to call 0K. And now, people were beginning to remember. Down at the youth center, a piano echoed through the hallway. It was Tyrell. His fingers danced over the keys. His body leaned into the sound like it was part of him. A few kids sat nearby, listening. Maya was there too, scribbling in her notebook, drawing every moment as if she didn't want to forget a second. "What do you call that piece?" one of the kids asked. Tyrell smiled. "I call it The Quiet Man." The room fell silent for a moment. Then someone asked, "Is that about a hero?" Tyrell shook his head. "No," he said softly. "It's about a man who never asked to be one." Elsewhere, a sleek government vehicle pulled into an underground facility outside Washington, D.C. Inside, a file was placed on a large metal table. It was stamped with red ink. "Reopen. Ghost Unit 19, Subject 0K." A new man, sharp suit and steel eyes, reviewed the file. "Why now?" he asked. The reply came quickly. "Because the world is changing. And when things get dark again, we'll need the ones who've walked through the worst of it." He turned to the screen. There, a blurry photo of Keanu from the corner store security camera. Just his back. Hood up. Shoulders squared. But unmistakable. "What if he says no again?" the man asked. The officer beside him replied coldly. "Then we make it personal." Back in Los Angeles, Layla Hart was sitting in a radio studio. The room was small, filled with the smell of old wires and coffee. She was live on the air, reading a news story. It wasn't labeled news, just a voice. "We don't always get to know who the real heroes are," she said, her voice steady. "Sometimes they disappear before we can say thank you. But if you're listening, if you're out there, this is for you." She paused, then read a single line. "He didn't fight because he wanted to. He fought because he had to." At Amir's corner store, business had never been better. Tourists stopped by. Locals donated. A small wooden sign hung above the counter now. It read, "Protected by Silence." Amir cleaned the glass windows every morning like a ritual. He always left an extra stool beside the register. Just in case. Keanu returned. Sometimes he did, but only after closing hours. Just to help with the shelves. Never to be seen. One late night, Keanu stood outside the youth center gate, watching from across the street. The lights were off, but soft music floated from an open window. He recognized the notes. Tyrell's song. The Quiet Man. He closed his eyes, he smiled, and then his phone buzzed. A number from a world he had left behind lit up the screen. He didn't answer, but he knew they weren't done with him. Not yet. 3 days later, Maya found a small brown envelope in the mailbox at the youth center. Inside was a single red crayon and a note written in perfect block letters. "Always color your world. Never let it turn black and white." Keanu boarded a train. Heading north, no luggage, no phone. Just a bag with 2 things, the coin from Amir, and a folded piece of paper with Tyrell's first piano song printed on it. He wasn't running. He was just moving forward. Because sometimes the fight doesn't end. Sometimes it follows. But now he was ready. Not to destroy. Not to hide. But to protect what still mattered, and maybe to remind the world that sometimes the most powerful man in the room is the one who says nothing, yet does everything. The quiet man had returned. Not as a name, not as a title, but as a choice.